Rain fell in slow, heavy drops over New Atlanta, the kind of rain that made the streets shine like black glass and turned alleyways into rivers of shadow and neon. The city never slept, but it did forget, and in one of its forgotten corners, two girls sat huddled beneath a flickering sign that once read Starlight Diner, but now only blinked star-eyed over and over like a tired Lyra, sat with her back against cold, wet metal, her knees drawn up, her arms wrapped tight around them. She was tall, for her age, with skin that held a faint silver glow like moonlight caught in water. Her eyes were pale and sharp, always watching, always listening. She wore a tattered coat too big for her, stolen from a donation bin. Weeks ago it smelled of mildew and old smoke, but it kept the worst of the chill away. Next to her, Nessa curled into a tighter ball, smaller, younger, her dark hair matted with grime but her fingers restless. They tapped against the ground in a rhythm only she understood sometimes. Sparks would leap from her fingertips, tiny blue-white flashes that died before they could light the dark. She wore a scarf wrapped 3 times around her neck, not for warmth but to hide the thin scar that ran from her collarbone to her jaw, a mark left by something that was not human around. Nessa's neck coiled a creature no bigger than a house cat, its body slender, its wings folded tight against its sides, scales the color of cooled lava shimmered even in the dim light. It breathed slow and steady, a soft hiss with every exhale, the air around it, warm enough to keep the rain from sticking. Ember, that was the name Nessa had given it the day it hatched from a smooth black egg that had appeared in their escape pod, like a secret waiting to be born. They had been on the run for 27 days since their ship tore through the upper atmosphere like a dying star and crashed in the Badlands outside the city. They had nothing then, and they had even less. Now no credits, no comms, no allies, just each other and the dragon that followed Nessa like a shadow. Lyra shifted her weight and winced. A fresh bruise bloomed on her ribs from the last time they had been spotted by patrol drones. They were not supposed to be here. Earth was closed to off-worlders without clearance, and they had none. They were classified as anomalies, dangerous unknowns to be contained or eliminated. Nessa stirred and whispered without looking up. "Do you think they found the pod?" Lyra did not answer right. Away she watched the mouth of the alley where the streetlights cast long trembling shapes across the wet pavement. "Maybe," she said finally. Ember lifted its head, its eyes, 2 slits of molten gold. It made a low sound deep in its throat. Not a growl, but a warning. Lyra went still. Footsteps. Not the heavy clank of enforcer boots or the hum of hover units. These were slower, uneven human footsteps. She pulled Nessa closer and pressed a finger to her lips. Nessa nodded and stilled her twitching hands. Ember tucked its head beneath Nessa's chin. Its body coiled tight. Red figure appeared at the edge of the alley. A man. He wore a faded brown jacket with frayed cuffs. His boots were scuffed and his hair was streaked with gray. He carried no weapon, no scanner, no badge, just a paper bag in one hand and a thermos in the other. He stopped when he saw them. Most humans would have screamed or run or called the authorities. This one did. None of those things. He simply stood there for a long moment, his eyes moving from Lyra to Nessa to the small dragon around her neck. Then he took a step forward. Lyra tensed her fingers, curling into fists, ready to bolt or fight. Whichever came first, the man stopped again. He set the paper bag and thermos on a dry crate near the entrance of the alley, then stepped back. His hands open, palms out. "I brought food," he said, his voice rough but calm. Lyra said nothing. He waited. Rain dripped from the broken sign above them. "Starlight, starlight." Nessa's stomach growled, loud enough to echo. The man smiled just a little. He turned and walked a few paces away, giving them space. Lyra watched him go, then glanced at Nessa. Nessa nodded, her eyes wide but trusting slowly. Lyra rose, keeping herself between Nessa and the alley. "Mouth." She moved to the crate and peeked inside. The bag held 2 wrapped sandwiches and 2 apples. The thermos held hot soup. The smell alone made her mouth water. She looked back at the man. He stood with his back to them, staring out at the street, his shoulders hunched against the rain. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He turned slightly but did not face them. "Because no one should be out here alone in the rain." Lyra studied him, searching for lies, for traps, for hidden motives, but found none. Just tired eyes and quiet kindness. She returned to Nessa and handed her a sandwich. They ate quickly but carefully. Ember accepted a small piece of bread from Nessa's fingers and crunched it gently, its tail flicking in contentment. When they finished, Lyra wiped her hands on her coat and walked to the edge of the light. The man turned. You can stay with me, he said. Lyra frowned. Where I have a place, not much, but it's dry and safe. Safe from who? From everyone. She hesitated. We are not from here. I know how. He touched the side of his neck where a small scar curved like a crescent. I've seen others like you before. Lyra's breath caught. Though she nodded. Not many, but enough. Nessa appeared beside her. Then Ember still draped around her neck, her eyes bright with hope. Can we go? She asked. Lyra looked at the man, then at the alley, then at the city beyond. Full of eyes and ears and hunters, she thought of the pod hidden under mud and wire, the trackers they had ripped from their wrists, the night spent listening for footsteps that never stopped. Then she looked at Nessa, shivering despite the warmth Ember gave off. She made her choice. Both of you come with me, he said again, as if he had read her thoughts. This time Lyra nodded. The man turned and started walking. They followed. Rain still fell, but softer now, as if the sky had decided to give them a chance. They passed shuttered shops and flickering billboards, ads for things they did not understand. Voices speaking in languages they had never heard. The man led them down a narrow street, then into a service tunnel, the kind used for old transit lines long abandoned. The air grew warmer, the sound of the city faded. At the end of the tunnel was a heavy metal door with a rusted keypad. He tapped. In a code, the door hissed open. Inside was a room lit by soft yellow bulbs, walls lined with shelves of tools, broken machines, half-finished projects, wires snaking across the floor like vines in the corner. A cot, a small stove, a sink that dripped steadily. It was not a home, but it was shelter. He gestured to the cot. You can sleep there. Nessa climbed onto it immediately, Ember curling at her feet. Lyra stayed by the door. What is your name? She asked. Ellis, he said. Just Ellis. Just Ellis, she nodded. And you, Lyra, and Hernasahi smiled again. Small but real. Welcome, Lyra. Welcome. Nesahi turned to the stove and began heating water. Lyra watched him for a long time, then finally stepped fully inside and closed the door behind her. Outside the rain kept falling, but here, for the first time in weeks, it felt quiet, safe, and that was enough for now. The room beneath the city hummed with quiet life. Machines blinked with soft green and red lights. Wires coiled like sleeping snakes. Shelves held jars filled with screws, bolts, and strange glowing parts that pulsed faintly in the dim light. Ellis moved through it all with the ease of someone who had spent years alone but not lonely. Lyra watched him from the corner of the cot, her eyes sharp even in rest. Nessa slept deeply, curled around Ember, who breathed slow, steady warmth into the cold air. The dragon's scales had dulled slightly from exhaustion but still held that deep red glow like embers in a dying fire. Ellie set a bowl of warm broth on a crate near the cot, then stepped back, giving them space again. He never pushed. Never demanded, just offered, and waited. Lyra took the bowl and sipped the broth. It was simple salt and herbs and something earthy that reminded her of the forests near her birth world. The taste brought a sudden sharp ache to her chest, but she swallowed it down. Nessa stirred and reached for the second bowl. Her fingers brushed the edge and a tiny spark jumped from her skin to the metal. Ellis saw it but said nothing, just nodded, as if he had expected it. They ate in silence. Afterward, Ellis showed them where to wash. The water was warm from a small heater he had rigged to a solar battery. He handed them clean clothes, too old but whole. No rips, no stains, just soft cotton that smelled of soap and time. Lyra changed in the corner, keeping her back turned. Nessa did the same, her scarf still wrapped tight around her neck. When they were done, Ellis pointed to a shelf with blankets. Sleep, he said. You are safe here. Lyra wanted to believe him, but safety was a word that had burned her before. That night she did not sleep much. She listened to the sounds of the hidden workshop, the hum of machines, the drip of the sink, the soft sigh of Nessa's breathing, and the low rumble from Ember's throat. And she watched Elisha, sat at a workbench, his back to them, his hands moving over a broken device, his shoulders tense even in stillness. Once he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small photo. He stared at it for a long time, his thumb tracing the edge. Then he put it away. Lyra saw the look on his face, grief old and deep like a scar that never healed. The next morning, sunlight filtered through a narrow vent high in the wall, painting stripes across the floor. Nessa woke first, stretching like a cat, ember uncoiling from her neck and leaping lightly. To the floor she wandered over to Ellis, who was heating water for tea. "What is that?" she asked, pointing to a half-built machine on the table. "A signal booster. He said it catches stray transmissions from the orbital net scan. It talked to ships. Sometimes." Nessa's eyes lit up. She reached out and touched a wire. A spark leapt. The machine flickered to life screens lighting up with streams of data symbols and voices from far away. Ellie stared at her, then at the machine. "How did you do that?" Nessa shrugged. "I just wanted it to wake up." Ellis looked at Lyra. "Ash can do that sometimes." Lyra sighed. Ellis nodded slowly, then turned back to the machine. "You have a gift," he said to Nessa. Nessa smiled small, and Shember chirped and butted its head against her handover. The next few days a rhythm formed. Ellis worked on his machines. Nessa explored every corner of the workshop, asking questions, touching things, watching how they worked. Lyra stayed close, always watching, always listening. She noticed things. Ellis never went outside. During the day, only at night, and always with his hood up. He kept a locked drawer in his workbench that he never opened when they were near. And sometimes late at night, he would stand by the vent, staring up at the sky as if waiting for something. To Falone evening, Lyra found him at the workbench again. The photo in his hand, she stood in the shadows and watched. He whispered a name. Lara. The sound of it made Lyra freeze. A Lara that was the name on the shard. She kept hidden in her boot. The shard, that glowed when Nessa was near. She stepped forward. Ellis looked up startled, then quickly tucked the photo away. "You should be sleeping," he said. "Who is Alara?" His face changed, closed off like a door slamming shut. "No one." Lyra took another step. "She is someone else." Looked at her for a long time, then sighed. "My sister." Lyra's breath caught. "She was taken years ago by people who said she was dangerous because she was different." "Different?" Howellis hesitated. "She had abilities like yours." "Like Nessa's." Lyra's heart beat faster. "What happened to her?" "I do not know," he said softly. "They took her and I never saw her again." Lyra turned and walked back to the cot. That night she waited until Ellis slept, then pulled the shard from her boot. It was smooth black with a silver thread running through it, shaped like a teardrop. She held it in her palm and thought of the Namilera. The shard grew warm. A soft light pulsed from it. Once, twice. Nessa stirred in her sleep. Ember lifted its head and watched Lyra with golden eyes. Lyra tucked the shard away again. But now she knew Ellis was not just a kind stranger. He was family. The next morning, Nessa showed Ellis something new. She stood in the center of the room, Ember perched on her shoulder. "Watch," she said. She held out her hand palm. Up. Ember leaned forward and exhaled. A small flame bloomed in her palm, not burning her, just resting there, warm and bright. Ellis stared. "How Ember is not just a pet," Lyra said from the doorway. "He is a guardian made to protect." Ellis looked from Nessa to Lyra to the flame. "You are not just running from the authorities, are you?" Lyra shook her head. "We are running from something older, something that does not forgive." Ellis sat down heavily. "Tell me so." Lyra told him about the ship that fell from the sky, about the hunters in black armor who spoke in silence, about the mark on Nessa's neck left by a blade that burned with cold fire, and about the shard. When she showed it to him, his hand shook. He took it gently. "This belonged to her," he whispered. "To Alara." "How?" "Do you know? Because I gave it to her." Lyra felt the world tilt. She nodded. "She made me promise to keep it safe if anything happened to her." Lyra looked at Nessa, who stood wide-eyed. Then she looked at Elise and understood. "We are her daughters." Ellis's breath caught. "What Lara did not die, she fled. She left us behind to keep us safe." Ellie stood slowly, his eyes filling with tears. "You are." Lyra nodded. "Both of us." He looked at Nessa, then back at Lyra. "All this time I thought she was gone." "She is out there somewhere." Ellis sank into a chair, his face in his hands. For a long time no one spoke. Then Ember leapt from Nessa's shoulder and padded over to Ellis. It nudged his hand with its snout. Ellis looked up. The dragon's eyes held no fear, only warmth. He reached out and touched its head. "You have been watching over." The member made a soft sound. Yes, Lyra stepped forward. We cannot stay here forever. They will find you. Celis wiped his eyes. Then we prepare. He stood. I have more than just a workshop. He walked to the locked drawer and opened it. Inside was not a weapon but a key and a map. This leads to a place my sister built, she said. If the world turned against her, she would have a way back. Lyra took the key where beneath the city deeper than anyone knows. Nessa came to stand. Beside her, we go together. Liz nodded together. That night they did not sleep. They planned, and for the first time since the ship fell, Lyra felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. It was small, fragile like a flame in the rain, but it was there, and it was enough. The silence broke just before dawn. It was not a sound but an absence. The hum of the city above stopped, the distant thrum of transit lines cut off. The night birds fell quiet all at once as if the world held its breath. Lyra felt it first. A cold prickle along her spine like ice sliding under her skin. She sat up on the cot. Her eyes scanning the room. Nessa slept beside her. Ember curled tight against her chest. Its usual warmth dimmed its breathing. Shallow Ellis was already on his feet, standing by the workbench, his hands resting on a panel of blinking lights, his face grim. They are here, he said. Lyra rose without a word. She moved to the wall where she had hidden her boots, pulled the shard from its place and tucked it into her coat pocket. Then, she turned to Nessa. Wake up. Nessa stirred, her eyes fluttering open wide and alert. Ember lifted its head, a low growl rumbling in its throat. They know we are here. Howells pointed to a small screen on the wall. Static filled it. Then a shape appeared. Black, tall, featureless, a figure in armor that absorbed light rather than reflected it. Void Covenant. The name tasted like Lyra had seen them before on her birth world. They came in silence. They left only ash and silence behind. They do not negotiate. They do not question, they erase. How did they find you? Celis shook his head. They always find what they hunt. Nessa stood clutching Ember to her chest, her fingers sparking faintly. What do we do? Run. Not yet. Ellis said. He tapped a sequence into the panel. The walls groaned. Then a section of the floor slid open, revealing a narrow tunnel below. Lyra grabbed Nessa's hand and pulled her toward the opening. Ember hissed, its wings flaring slightly. Then the door exploded, not with fire or noise, but with a pulse, a wave of cold that shattered the metal hinges and sent shards flying. Like glass, 3 figures stepped through, all armored in black plates that seemed to drink the light, their faces hidden behind smooth masks. No eyes, no mouth, just smooth, dark surfaces that gave nothing away. Void enforcers. Lyra pushed Nessa behind her. Ellis moved fast. He slammed his palm against a red switch on the wall. The room erupted, lights flared. Machines sparked, wires snapped and shot arcs of electricity across the floor. The enforcers staggered back for just a moment. Run, he shouted. Lyra did not hesitate. She pulled Nessa toward the tunnel. But Nessa twisted free. No, she turned and raised her hands. Sember leapt from her shoulder and landed on the floor between them and the enforcers. The dragon opened its mouth and breathed. Fire roared out. Not orange but white-hot, blinding. It struck the lead enforcer full in the chest, but the flames did not burn. They slid off the armor like water rolling off stone. The enforcer did not flinch. It raised a Honda blade of black energy formed in the air. Sharp and humming. Nessa. Lyra lunged, but Ellis was faster. He threw himself in front of Nessa. The blade struck his side. He gasped and fell to one knee. Blood, dark and warm, spilled onto the floor. Nessa screamed. Lyra grabbed her and pulled her toward the tunnel. Ellis looked up, his face pale but his eyes clear. The second enforcer stepped forward. Its hand raised, another blade forming. Lyra kicked a metal crate into its path. Then, shoved Nessa down the hole. She dropped in after her. The tunnel was narrow and steep. They slid down rough metal into darkness. Above them, the door began to close. Ellis crawled toward it, blood trailing behind him. He reached the edge just as the hatch sealed shut with a heavy clang. Silence, then pounding. The enforcers were trying to break through. Lyra helped Nessa to her feet. Where are we? Maintenance shaft. Ellis said, his voice weak. He leaned against the wall. His hand pressed to his side. Blood seeped between his fingers. We have to keep moving. He nodded toward the darkness. Follow the red lights. Lyra supported his weight as they moved. Nessa walked ahead. Ember lighting the way with its soft glow. The tunnel twisted downward deeper into the earth. The air grew colder, damper after what felt like hours. They reached a chamber walls lined with old servers. Rusted pipes running along the ceiling. A single bulb flickered above a metal table. Ellis collapsed onto a bench. Nessa knelt beside him. Tears streaking. Her face, "You should not have done that." He smiled faintly. "I would do it again." Lyra tore a strip from her coat and pressed it to his wound hold. This Nessa obeyed, her hands trembling. Ellis closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. "They will not. Stoppy know they think we are impure." Lyra frowned. "What does that mean?" Ellis took a shaky breath. "The Covenant believes only pure bloodlines should exist. They hunt hybrids like you. Like Alara. Why? Because you are stronger. Because you can do things they cannot." Control. Nessa looked at her hands. "Is that why they marked me?" Ellis nodded. "They tried to drain your power to silence it. But it did not work." No, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the photo. Alara fought them till Lyra took it. In the picture, a woman stood with Ellis, both young, both smiling. She had Lyra's eyes and Nessa's smile. "She looks like us. She is you." Ellis's voice grew weaker. "You are not just her daughters. You are her legacy." Lyra felt the weight of those words settle on her shoulders. "What do we do?" Ellis pointed to a panel on the far wall. "There is a vault behind it. Only Alara's bloodline can open it. You must go. What about you?" "I will hold them off." Lyra shook her head. Ellis gripped her arm, his strength surprising. "Listen to me, they will come through that hatch soon. You have to get to the vault. You have to remember who you are." Lyra wanted to argue, but she saw the truth in his eyes. He would not last much longer. And if they stayed, they would all die. She nodded. Anessa looked up, her face streaked with tears and soot. Wigomber chirped softly and climbed onto her shoulder. Lyra helped Ellis lie down, then pressed the shard into his handkeep. "This safe." He closed his fingers around it. "Go." They turned and walked toward the panel. As they reached it, Lyra looked back. Ellis lay still, his eyes closed, his chest rising and falling slowly. Then the hatch above groaned. Metal screeched. They were coming. Lyra placed her palm on the panel. It glowed faintly. Recognized. The wall slid open. Darkness waited beyond. Nessa took Lyra's hand. Ember hissed. They stepped inside. The wall closed behind them, and the chamber fell silent, except for the sound of footsteps above and the slow, steady beat of a heart that refused to stop just yet. The vault was not a room but a memory. Walls curved like the inside of a shell, smooth and cool to the touch. Faint lines of light pulsed beneath the surface like veins carrying starlight. The air smelled of ozone and old metal and something else. Something. Aliveness stepped forward, Ember tight against her neck, its eyes wide reflecting the soft glow. Lyra followed her hand resting on the wall. It hummed under her fingers, a low, steady vibration that matched the beat of her own heart. "This place knows," she said. Nessa nodded. "It feels like home." They moved deeper. The floor sloped downward into a wider chamber. At the center stood a pedestal no taller than Nessa's waist. On it rested a sphere of black glass swirling with silver mist inside. Ember leapt down and padded to the pedestal. It circled once, then sat, its tail curled around its feet. Its gaze fixed on the sphere. Lyra approached slowly. As she neared, the mist inside the sphere shifted. A shape formed, a woman tall with silver eyes, and a scarf wrapped around her neck just like Nessa's. Lyra's breath caught. The image spoke not with sound but with feeling, words blooming in their minds like thoughts that were not their own. "You have come." Nessa reached out, her fingers trembling. "Mother." The image smiled, not in body but in spirit. "I am here through this echo I left behind. Why did you leave us? To keep you safe. The Covenant hunts our line. They fear what we are, what you will become. What are we? More than they know." The mist swirled again, and new images appeared. A ship shaped like a crescent moon streaking through stars, a hidden colony on a world with twin suns. A child placed in a pod wrapped in a scarf marked with a symbol. That was you, Nessa. And you, Lyra. Another pod sent to a different world, so if one was found, the other might live. We were never meant to be alone. No, but the stars brought you together again. Lyra looked at Nessa and Ellis. She was always meant to find you. He was your anchor. Your first human home. Tears filled Nessa's eyes. "Is he going to die?" The image softened. His fate is his own, but his choice was yours. Lyra turned away. We should have stayed. You would have died. Then we fight. Yes. The mist shifted again, showing new scenes. Nessa as a child, her hands sparking with blue. Fire ember hatching from an egg that glowed like a fallen star. Lyra standing on a battlefield, her skin shining silver, her eyes blazing. You are not just survivors. You are weapons shaped by love. Not war. What do we do now? Awaken. The sphere pulsed. Lyra felt a pull in her chest like a thread snapping taut. She stepped forward and placed both hands on the sphere. Ness did the same. Ember pressed its forehead to the glass. Light erupted, not blinding but deep, filling the chamber with warmth and sound. Voices, singing in a language older than words. Knowledge poured into them. How to channel energy through touch. How to speak without sound. How to call the fire that burns without fuelness. A gasped as power surged through her veins. Her scar glowed bright. Then, faded, leaving smooth skin behind. Lyra felt her senses sharpen. She could hear the hum of the city above, the whisper of air through vents, the slow drip of water 3 levels down. And she understood. They were not broken. They were whole. The image of Lyra faded. The sphere went dark, but the knowledge remained. Nessa turned to Lyra, her eyes bright with new certainty. We go back. Lyra nodded. Not to hide, to fight. They moved through the vault, now seeing what they had missed before. Lockers lined one wall. Inside were suits of flexible armor, light as cloth but strong as steel. Weapons too. Not guns but rods that hummed with stored energy. And a map, not paper, but light projected from a panel in the floor. It showed the city above and the Covenant's position. Marked in red, they were still in Ellis's workshop, but they were not alone. More enforcers had arrived, drawn by the signal of the vault's activation. They know we are here. They always knew. Nessa pulled on a suit. It fit as if made for her. Embers. Scales darkened, then lightened, shifting to match the gray of the walls. Lyra fastened the last clasp on her armor. We do not run. We end this. They returned the way they came. The tunnel felt different now. Narrower. Sharper. Every sound. Clear. Every shadow. To find when they reached the hatch, they heard voices above, cold, flat voices speaking in the Covenant tongue. They are gone. No, they are close. Find them. Lyra placed a hand on the hatch. Nessa stepped beside her. Ember coiled low, ready on my signal. Lyra whispered. Nessa nodded. Lyra pressed a sequence into the panel. The hatch opened silently. Light from the workshop spilled in. 3 enforcers stood near the table. Ellis was gone. Lyra's heart clenched, but then she saw it, a trail of blood leading to the far wall. He was still alive. The enforcers turned as one. Too late. Nessa raised her hand. Ember leapt. Fire erupted, not white this time, but blue, sharp and cutting. It struck the first enforcer, and this time the armor cracked. The enforcer staggered back, smoke rising from its chest. Lyra moved fast. She grabbed one of the energy rods from her belt and slammed it into the second enforcer's side light. Exploded. The enforcer fell. The third turned to run. Nessa pointed. A bolt of energy shot from her fingertips, striking the enforcer in the back. It collapsed. Silence, then a groanalist. They found him behind a stack of crates, pale but awake. You came back. We are not leaving you. Nessa knelt and placed her hands on his wound. Warmth spread from her palms. The skin knit together. The blood slowed. Ellis gasped. How? You are part of us now. Lyra helped him stand. We have to move. The Covenant will send. Ellis nodded weakly. There is a way out through the old transit lines. Lead us. They moved quickly through the workshop. As they reached the tunnel entrance, a new sound filled the air. A deep hum, like 1,000 voices speaking at once. They looked up through the vent. They saw ships, black and silent, hovering over the city. The High Inquisitor had come. Lyra's blood ran cold. He is the one who took Ilarino. He will face what she left behind. Nessa gripped her hand. We are ready. Ember hissed, its scales glowing faintly. Ellis leaned on Lyra, his steps slow but steady. They disappeared into the tunnel. Above them the city trembled. But below, the fire burned brighter than ever. The old transit lines ran deep beneath New Atlanta tunnels, built when the city still believed in the future, wide enough for trains that never came. Now they were empty, silent corridors lit only by the occasional flickering bulb, or the soft glow from Ember's scales. Lyra walked ahead, Her steps quiet, her eyes scanning every shadow. Ellis leaned on Nessa. His wound closed, but his strength not yet returned. Nessa kept one hand on his arm, the other resting on Ember, who walked beside her tail. Low alert, they were not running anymore. They were hunting. Above them, the hum of Covenant ships grew louder. Not with engines, but with presence of pressure in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. They know we are coming, Lyra said. Good, Nessa, replied. Ellis looked at them both, his face pale but calm. What you are about to face, he said, is not just a man, it is a belief, a machine of faith that has erased thousands like you. We are not like the others. Lyra said. No, he said, you are better. They reached a junction where 3 tunnels met. In the center stood a rusted control box covered in dust. Lyra wiped it clean and pressed a sequence into the keypad. Lights flared to life along the walls. Not the dim yellow of before, but bright white, clean and sharp. The vault had unlocked more than memories, it had awakened the city's bones. A map appeared on the wall lines, tracing paths through the underground, showing the Covenant's movements converging on a single point, the central spire, the tallest structure in New Atlanta, and the heart of the human alliance. That is where he waits, the High Inquisitor. Why there? Because he wants the humans to see. He wants them to know what happens to those who defy purity. Then we give them a different. Nessa stepped forward, her eyes bright. How do we get in through the old maintenance shaft? It leads to the spire's Coriolis. Nodded. I can get you to the base, but no farther. You have done enough. No, he said. I will see this end. They moved again, faster. Now the tunnel sloping upward, the air growing warmer, the hum above turning into a deep vibration that shook the walls. At the base of the spire, they found the entrance hidden behind a false wall. Covered in graffiti, Lyra placed her palm on the metal. It recognized her. The wall slid open. Inside was a shaft wide enough for one, a ladder leading up into darkness. Nessa went first, Ember coiled around her shoulders. Lyra followed. Ellis waited below, his hand on a detonator wired to the tunnel behind them. If I do not return, he said. You will, he smiled. They climbed. The spire rose like a needle through the sky, floor after floor, past dimly lit empty offices, storage rooms sealed tight at the top. They found a chamber wide and circular walls of glass showing the city below, lights stretching to the horizon. Covenant ships hovered like black stars, and the center stood a figure taller than the enforcers, his armor not black but silver, etched with symbols that shifted. When looked at too long, his mask was smooth but for a single line down the center like a closed eye. The High Inquisitor. He turned as they entered. You should not be here, we belong here. Nessa stepped forward. You took our mother. I saved her from her corruption. She was not corrupt. You are the corruption, Ember hissed and leapt from Nessa's shoulder. Fire shot toward the Inquisitor. He raised a hand. The flames froze midair, then shattered like glass. Lyra moved. She drew the energy rod and struck. The Inquisitor blocked with a blade of dark light sparks. Flew, you fight like her, he said. I'm her. They circled. Nessa raised her hands and sent bolts of blue energy. The Inquisitor deflected each one, but his steps slowed. He was strong but not endless. Lyra saw it, the slight tremor in his stance, the flicker in his armor. He had hunted for too long. He had forgotten what it meant to be challenged. She feinted, left, then struck right. The rod connected with his sidelight exploded. His mask cracked. Beneath it was not a face, but something older. Eyes black as void, skin stretched tight over bone that should not exist. You are not human. No, he said, I am beyond. Nessa screamed and unleashed everything. A wave of power erupted from her hands. Ember breathing fire at the same time. The chamber shook. Glass shattered. The Inquisitor staggered. Lyra struck again. This time the rod pierced his chest. He gasped a sound like wind through dead trees. Then he fell. His armor dissolved into ash. The ships above flickered, then powered down. Silence. Nessa ran to the edge and looked out. The city watched lights turned toward the spire. People gathered in the streets. They had witnessed. Lyra stood over the ash. It is done. Nessa joined her. What Noellis appeared at the entrance. His face streaked with soot, but his eyes clear. Now you choose. Lyra looked at the stars. Our mother is out there. Nessa nodded. We find her. Ellis stepped forward. I will come with you. You have a home here, so. Do you? He smiled. I was never whole until you came. They stood together, watching the city below. No longer fugitives, no. Longer afraid they had nothing once, now they had each other, and a legacy no one could erase. They left the spire as the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Ember flew ahead, its wings catching the sun. Lyra and Nessa walked side by side. Ellie's followed, not behind but with them. The stars waited, and this time they would not run. They would return, as air says fire is home.